Right now, I'd like to present you this intake manifold that is ported and polished, as well as the 76mm throttle body. And I heard those things should increase horsepower and torque to improve performance, in which I cannot wait to get that installed in my Lexus GS350 F Sport. As you can see, that this aluminum intake manifold is nicely ported and polished on the surface as well as the chamber. It is nice and smooth with no rough spots. It is very, very smooth. No rough spots, as I mentioned. If it were to be all rough spots, it would be more of a turbulence. With less air means less power. So, nicely done. And then next up here is the upper intake manifold, all polycarbonate. Yeah, if you guys notice that these are all factory Lexus or Toyota intake manifolds. Of course, this one was made by Eisen, made for Toyota. So this one in particular is a 76mm throttle body. That is, I would say, correct me if I'm wrong on this one, derived from a Toyota Sequoia or Tacoma. Yeah, I suppose I heard that it was for that size. And also ported and polished as well to fit to size. As well as with the necessary hardware that includes a bracket that goes in between the intake manifold and the throttle body behind. So with this one, the rear side of the coolant inlet has been bolted off and cut off to fit to size, as I mentioned earlier, and then leaving this one open. So that one I'll be utilizing the T-fitting, so that way it'll stay cool, maybe if I'm right or wrong. But I heard most Lexus owners may not need to use the coolant bypass, so they could either use but some Lexus owners I heard may not need to use the coolant inlet, but for my particular one, I'll be using it just with the T-fitting, so that way they'll go back and forth as a coolant flow. So yeah, it does come with the options, a T-fitting or a straight through, so you don't have to use the throttle, so the throttle body doesn't need to use the coolant here. So, but yeah, I'll be happy to use that one with the T-fitting, as you can see right there, that came with a nice set of hardware. Then lastly, this is the polycarbonate intake manifold upper side. So way before, when it's all normally crafted, there was a lot of restrictions around it. So that one had been nicely ported for more airflow. So as you guys can see here, as well as the throttle body inlet, nicely ported as well. And before heading out for installation, I want to extend a huge special thanks and shout out to Trigga Spec by Trigga M for making this all happen. This is a perfect solution for all Lexus owners out there with the 2GR platform, including but not limited to IS350, GS350, and RC350. Like I said, 2GR platform, including the FSC and the FKS. If you guys are interested in more power and torque, please check them out. I guarantee that you will never be disappointed. Nice. 911 turbo. Okay, here we go. Alright guys, so the throttle body is out, so this is the stock body and the new body here that is nicely ported and polished and more wider and bigger. Well, the camera showed something that makes it look like the same, but in my bare eyes, it's different than what my camera showed. So yeah, I just can't wait to get that in. Back to the stock body. For about 50,000 miles, Got a lot of loaded carbon buildups around it in the back. Yeah, I mean, so now as you guys can see, this is the stock throttle body. It's a little bit smaller, and this is the stock OEM upper intake manifold and the lower intake manifold that is all stock. As you can see, this is a lot of extra meat around it that is basically part of its restriction. I can feel it's very rough and gritty. Installation has been completed finally. Let's go ahead and test it out. Okay, it has been 800 miles of it being driven after the installation, but after the installation at the shop, when we started up, the engine was idling very roughly for about a couple of minutes for the ECU to read and relearn. And after a couple of some minutes, the engine settles down, but it still idles very, very high, revs pretty high, and therefore throwing a code results in a check engine light, which that's not a very pleasant sight. But after around 800 miles of driving for it to settle, but still it's idles pretty high. I have tried to perform a throttle body relearn for a couple of times, but still idles pretty high and it's behaving the same. But also we checked for leaks even before or in the midst or after driving 800 miles for it to settle, but still we didn't see any leaks, and still it's idling pretty high. Might probably consider remapping, or I have to do some physical changes. But the good thing is there are no other issues, but the only thing that triggered an engine light is that the high idle was the cause. That's the only issue. But we did check for any possible leaks on the upper intake manifold, but we didn't see any. But I'm kind of skeptical that there might be. But I mean, who knows how many miles have that upper intake manifold has been driven or been used or gone through. Acceleration wise, I could hardly recall how this car had performed previously before getting the ported manifolds installed, as well as a bigger throttle body. And for right now, I felt a slight difference, a very, very slight difference on the acceleration pull. But once again, I'm very skeptical about the ported manifold, the upper manifold, which I'm not too sure. But again, we already checked for any leaks, but sometimes we can't tell if there might be a hidden one, which we'll have to probably reinstall the stock one, which is obviously in its original state on its condition. But I will get to work on this after this clip. Alright, now I got everything all done. Should be ready to start up anytime soon. Alright, here we go. So like I said, as I did before, when you install something, it usually idles roughly, starts roughly. It'll take some time for the ECU to read and rewrite and relearn. But first I'm gonna have to power the vehicle so it can load up and prime. But so far I double checked the engine to make sure everything's all connected and strapped in, so nothing else that I would miss. All right, so here we go. Okay, not so bad. So as it's idling right now, I have to check the both sides of the coolant bypassing the throttle body, make sure there's no leaks or anything. But so far, from what I'm seeing, I don't see any leaks, so it should be good right about now. After for about a couple of, to like 5 or maybe 6 minutes of its idling. So yeah, it should be good to go. So again, I reinstalled the stock throttle body, but the ported manifold is still here, and also the ported and polished aluminum manifold is still there as well. But again, that bigger throttle body actually took up so much space, so therefore it actually slightly lifted the manifold upwards a little bit. That actually left some hidden gaps that where we couldn't see, or we couldn't find any leaks, which was weird. I probably think for this kind of generation, the GS, they kind of redesigned it differently. Alright, now to the conclusion of this video. So I heard porting and polishing your intake manifold will be one of the best ways to increase more horsepower and torque. But currently my car has the ported intake manifolds, including the polished lower manifold, and a clean stock throttle body. At the time, after the installation for both the manifolds and the throttle body, the car starts up very roughly for a first couple of minutes, and then after a couple of minutes the engine became very smooth. And then the engine was actually idling very high, and then that threw in the check engine light, which is not a good sign. And so I had to figure out a ways to mitigate that. When I tried driving for 700 miles to see if it can actually settle down, it didn't work. And then I even tried another way to mitigate that is performing the throttle body relearn, and therefore the throttle body relearn didn't work. And so I decided to reinstall the original stock throttle body. When all else had failed, I decided to reinstall the original manifold. But then when I tried to reinstall the 76mm large throttle body, and then it didn't fit in anymore, and that came to realize that realized why that the engine idled very high for the longest time, that the bigger throttle body actually left a huge gap. After solving the problem, I reinstalled the supported manifold back in and with the stock throttle body. But before installing the stock throttle body, I deep cleaned it and then did a quick sanding around to make sure there's no any other carbon buildups that are hidden inside. So therefore, it started up back to normal again, and the engine light is gone. So hopefully sometimes when I have some time to spare, I'll have to do some quick metal filing on some of the parts, likely right here, so I can remove most of the metal materials so I can actually fit in nice and easily. So therefore there will be more airflow and more power and torque. Probably about a few numbers. But the funny thing is that while trying to drive about 700 miles, it took me about a month for all this to get that resolved. And so if you guys enjoy watching this, please click on the like button, and do not forget or hesitate to subscribe to my channel. That means so much to me. Thank you for watching. Have a great night. Stark 12 signing out.